Jacob Wiseman.
And I'm Michael Over.
And this is a special edition of Pass It On. Hi, I'm Jacob Wiseman.
And I'm Michael Over.
And this is a special edition of Pass It On here at Parish Hill Middle School and High School. Our guest today here is Mr. Benini, who has been doing the hovercraft program at the school for how long has it been?
We started in 2002.
Wow. That's cool. Is it possible for the crafts here to crash?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've had a few bumps and bangs during racing and during testing. Occasionally somebody gets a little bit carried away and they clip a fence if they're practicing out on the front baseball field. Had a student flying in from the water, and she kind of was going a little too fast. She overshot the ramp and hit some rocks. We had a student hit a dock once too, but we build these crafts so that they absorb the impact, and of course when anybody's flying them, they're wearing a helmet and a life jacket and protective gear, so nobody has ever gotten hurt doing it in terms of our students.
Where do you race then?
Well, we have been trying to get a race together here in Connecticut. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm still working on that. We have been going to Chillicothe, Ohio for what's an event called Hover Rally. And Hover Rally is the big hovercraft event in the United States each year. It's held at the last weekend of June, so it's pretty hot up there. But there are 6 or 7 different classes of racing, and there's also cruising going on. So for people who don't want to race, they can go cruising up and down the Scioto River. For the rest of us, we're there to race, and it's very well organized and an awful lot of fun. And there's no sleep. It's just the action just keeps going.
I have a question.
What inspired you to do this?
Oh, that's a long story, but I think I can boil it down to 30 seconds for you. A friend of mine asked me what I've been up to with my classes. He, after hearing what I said, what I was doing, he said, "That Principles of Technology class you got, that sounds pretty interesting. Have you thought about a concluding activity or project?" And I said, "Well, no, we have these labs and hands-on experiments and so on and so forth." And he said, "Well, have you ever considered building a hovercraft?" And I said, "Well, I thought about it years and years ago. I saw one on the cover of Highway Mechanics magazine, but I never had the opportunity." He said, "I know where you can get plans." One thing led to another, and we built our first craft the last 10 weeks of school. Last day of school in 2002, we had our first craft out on the front baseball field, and the bell rang, everybody went home, except for myself and about a dozen students. They were too busy having too much fun flying this thing around the front field, and we got hooked. We took it out on the Connecticut River that same August, because here, the guy who got me into this mess in the first place, he has an event called Hover In. Basically, it's a big play date for people with hovercrafts. We all got together. My students flew. Their parents took it out and flew it. Had an awful lot of fun with it. And my principal at the time said, "You're going to do this again next year, right?" And I said, "Right, I'm going to do this again next year, since it works out so well, and since you're so strongly suggesting." But the program has just taken off on its own. Students are so into this, and it's so much fun. A lot of work, but very, very rewarding for everybody involved.
How long does it take to make one of these?
Well, this particular craft right here is based on a design called the 10F. Basically, it's 10 feet long and primarily made out of styrofoam. That's why it has that designation. We bought the plans for it, but we made a lot of changes to it. This is not what the standard cockpit looks like. We figured out a way to make the hull very, very rigid so that we could make any shaped cockpit we wanted to and make it very, very light. It took us, I would say, probably about 16 weeks to build this one. And then probably a few more weeks just to get all the paint and details and work out the bugs and things. But it's not difficult to do. Anybody with average skills and average tools can build one of these in their garage.
What is a hovercraft?
All right, well, hovercraft goes by different names. The term hovercraft is the most familiar with everybody, but it also goes by the term air cushion vehicle, which should clue you in as to what it is. It's literally a platform, a vehicle that rides on a cushion of air. To see one of these fly, it looks as though it's not riding on anything. This flexible part right here fills up with air like a balloon. It's called the skirt. And all the skirt does, it forms a flexible wall, almost like the seal on a mason jar, with whatever surface you're trying to fly under or over. Underneath of it, there's an empty cavity, a space, if you will, and that fills up with air. Now, by having this flexible seal, the craft will rise up until it gets to a point where the air starts to leak out underneath the bottom of the skirt, and that's as high as it goes.
How high is that?
From the bottom of the hull, if you were to fly this on the floor right here, you'd have 6 inches of clearance. That's the reason why you have the skirt. Without the skirt, you might have 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. To see this in action, the skirt is touching and not touching all the time. So you anywhere have anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of clearance with daylight. But of course, no surface is pretty much perfectly flat, so it's constantly making breaking contact, but it's just barely touching. The air itself is picking the whole craft up and carrying it around. So that's what it basically is. Now you have air to lift it, but you need some sort of propulsion forward, and that's what that prop in the back is for. When that spins, that pushes air out the back, just like on an airplane, except that planes usually are pulled, this is pushed.
And how fast does the craft go when it's moving?
This craft, on a good day on water, because that's where it flies very, very well, with a lightweight pilot, we don't have an exact documentation as the actual speed, but looking at the film footage we've shot of it, I would say between 25 and 28 miles per hour, which doesn't sound like much, but if you've ever driven a go-kart, even though you're going 25 miles an hour, it feels like you're going a lot faster. Same effect with this.
Can it carry?
The 10F was originally designed to carry a 250-pound man. So it will carry 250 pounds. Not as fast as it would carry a, say, person your size and weight, but it will carry, you know, the heavier the person is, the more thrust it takes to move the person forward, but the lighter the person, the more speed you're going to get. Well, it's a little hard to imagine, but this is actually a big slab of styrofoam. There's basically a 2-inch thick slab of styrofoam, and what's right on the surface here is a piece of 1/8-inch thick plywood. The plywood is bonded to the styrofoam, and then underneath of it there's more foam making an angled piece so that when you're sliding around on the water, if the skirt should get pushed in, it won't grab and make you fly out of this thing. This is all styrofoam covered with fiberglass. The duct is foam and glass as well, so it's very, very light. Where we need to mount something solid, like the engine mounts, what we'll do is we'll cut a hole into the styrofoam and we'll glue blocks of wood into the foam and then put a larger piece of plywood underneath of it. So you're basically compressing the styrofoam between pieces of wood, so you get something what we call a hard point. You can bolt something large and heavy or vibrating like that engine into it and not have to worry about it tearing out.
How do you steer it?
How
How do you steer it?
very interesting question. Do you guys ever see a car trying to steer on a frozen lake? Okay, well, imagine yourself, you're behind the wheel of a car and you're driving a straight line on a lake that's frozen. You turn the wheel, now the wheels of the car turn, but the car doesn't do a whole lot. Now, gradually, the body of the car is going to turn, but you're still sliding in the direction that the car was driving in. Eventually, the motion of the wheel starts to pull the car in the new direction that you turn the wheels in. It's almost the same thing with this. To steer this, we have, in this particular craft, we have a steering bar. In the back, you'll see we've got these rudders that are moving. What they do is they deflect or turn the air in whichever direction it is you want to go. And just like the car on the frozen lake, the body of the craft will turn initially, and then a few seconds later, because you've changed its direction and you've changed the direction of the thrust, now the craft will start to move. So you do a lot of sliding, but that's all part of the fun of doing this.
that the same kind of mechanics that they use in some airplanes?
Yes, airplanes steer by using rudders deflecting air, and that's exactly how this thing works.
All right, any other questions?
Sergeant Chaplin, estimated time of arrival,
Please remain seated.
6.5 minutes. Surface temperatures are 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you for flying Air Chase.